You're listening to Ka-Pow, the pop culture podcast. Comics, television, movies, and more. If it impacts fan culture, we have something to say about it. And now, your hosts, Jordan, Cliff, and Seth.
Hey, welcome back to Ka-Pow, the pop culture podcast. We are just delighted to have you. My name is Jordan Lowe.
I'm Cliff Barnes.
I'm Seth.
Been a little bit.
Yeah.
Took a mini break.
We've been busy. We got busy lives.
Yeah.
We're trying to sit down on this Friday night and just take a breath. Remember why we do this.
I got an anecdote if you want to hear.
Oh, anecdote.
You have to start it with I have an anecdote.
Yeah.
Play an anecdote.
I've got a miniature secret anecdote.
Well, that sort of like builds it up. This might not be that great. But, so, I bought some new shoes. There's my anecdote.
Okay.
I'm not a shoe guy.
I know where this is going.
I'm not a shoe guy. I'm not a fashion guy. I don't care what, as long as they look all right and they're comfortable, I don't really care. So.
I saw your shoes. I thought they were like very Daredevil.
Black and red. I went with black and red, yeah. So, I've worn Skechers the last couple new shoes I've gotten because I just go to that shoe depot out by Walmart.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have a limited selection, just piles of shoes. Okay.
That makes it easier. Limited selection. Good.
Exactly. So I don't have to stress too much about it. But like the last couple pairs I've gotten, the soles have just worn out till they're almost like slippery on the bottom. So like, maybe I'll get some other brand, Nike or something. So I was going to the mall to watch a movie. I'm like, the mall has a whole bunch of shoe stores. Let's go to the mall and I'll have my pick of the litter.
Oh my God.
And it
We
was
should send a live cam.
It was right after Free Comic Day, so I have a little extra money. That's where I have. That's
Oh,
why
he was living high on the horse.
Yeah,
oh,
so
he was. You should have seen us at trivia. Freaking making it rain.
So anything beyond a bare necessity, it's like it's May, I can afford it. Let's do it. Shoes. So I bought pair. I looked at my bank statement last May, and I hadn't shopped at shoe department. So it was 2 Mays ago. So I've had those shoes for 2 years. I'm like, all right, they're falling apart. Let's do it. Let's get new shoes.
I looked at last year's bags.
Yes.
That's good.
If
you didn't buy them in May, you didn't buy them anything. It wasn't you. You only had to check May.
Yeah, exactly. It was easy to find. I just scrolled back. Yeah. So I was in the mall at the movie end by the food court. What's the closest store there? Shoe department. I'm like, it's the exact same store.
It's the same store.
Yes.
So, but it's way bigger than the one we've got. So I walk up and down the aisles. I'm like, there's all kinds of shoes to pick from. It's like, but my memory of the mall is like, there's a shoe store every other shop. So I'm like, I'm going to walk the mall and find all these other shoe stores. I'm like, so I start walking. I'm like, there's not as many shoe stores as I remember. So I go in the one that's, the sports whatever, and they've got, it's not, it's running shoes and fancy shoes. It's like, this isn't really
no comic shop guy shoes.
No.
Like, I'm a middle-aged white guy. Point me toward the white New Balances. I just need the bare bones. So I go into the next one, and it's like, there's only I swear there's 8 pairs of shoes on the wall, and they're all like in cases with they're the collectible, the limited edition, this ones or that ones. And there's these 2 hip young dudes looking at them. I'm like, nope, I don't belong here. So like, they're all like neon colors and, pastels and, crazy wild shoes. I'm like, nah. Hit the next shop. Oh, there's a bunch of Nikes. Oh, they're all over $100. Oh, they're all ugly. Okay, I don't need any of these. So I make the whole loop of the mall and end up back at shoe department where there's just
where you belong.
Yeah. This is my place. There's just a pile of shoes. So I look through.
It's just a pile. You just go there. You got to find a left and a right. Who cares?
Is there a size 12 in here somewhere? Okay. Oh, there's matching. Let's do it. So I looked at some Skechers and I don't know
that's their slogan.
Yeah.
Skechers.
I don't know how long it's been since you bought shoes. How many Mays? But 90% of shoes don't even have shoelaces anymore. They want you to just slip them on.
I hate that.
No, yeah. I want laces.
My son buys those. And I'm like, no, I need to torque these suckers down. So someone to slip on top there.
Yeah.
Skechers. There he is.
No, they're Skechers. Yeah.
Guess what store I bought them at.
What's on the other foot? What else you get in that pile?
Oh, it's totally different. Because of hiking boots.
I can't do the Crocs or the moccasins or the slip-ons or the I just need a pair of shoes I can tie.
Like a man.
Yeah, so I found a pair of Adidas that I liked. They didn't fit very well. So I'm like, oh, I like these too. Oh, fit like a glove. Wonderful. Guy went back to the back room. He was gone for like 5 minutes to go get the other because they only put the one shoe out.
Yeah.
He had to go get the other
one shoe.
So he came back. I was happy with my purchase. They were on sale. I'm walking out of the mall, and those same two dudes were sitting outside on the little foyer. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking by with my shoe department bag, like, yep, we all ended up where we were supposed to be today.
Right.
So I get my new shoes. I'm happy with them. They'll last me till next May at least.
That's what they said when he checked out. They're like, see you next May.
So that was a Monday, my day off. And then I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. Our good pal Michael K. Easton came into the store.
Oh, yeah. And
he was like, oh, went to the mall today, got some new shoes. Dude had the exact same shoes I picked. And I thought, what are the odds that I've not bought a new pair of shoes in literally, I know for a fact, 2 years.
Yes.
I went to
he had to go to the back for.
Yeah, I went.
He called Michael. Store. He's like, hey, Jordan's here. It's May. He's buying these Adidas black and red sneakers.
He's like, we have them in a 7.
Yep.
Come on in.
So, yeah, it's a store I don't normally shop at. It's the thing I don't normally buy. Within 2 days of each other, we bought the exact same shoes. That was a cosmic coincidence.
I
found enticing.
I don't know.
That's
Jordan.
a good story. I saw the pic. I saw the pic.
Story.
You guys holding your shoes up together. Yeah. Like that was good.
So history.
And Michael spends a lot of time at the mall. He's constantly getting his face waxed or something. Every time I'm in there, he's leaned back on a chair.
That's a whole other
Christmas if I don't walk by and he's laying there getting something waxed. Some sad lady leaned over him.
He's got beautiful eyebrows.
Oh my gosh, they're so well trimmed. It's whatever happened to that guy? I don't remember when the last time I saw him was. Christmas?
It's been a while for me.
Surely I've seen him since Christmas. I don't know. I feel like we're all related. You guys, I mean, closest cousin. I'm his brother-in-law. You're his shoe brother.
So that brings back memories of the early days of this podcast.
Indeed.
Which we were just talking about. Maybe some of you out there maybe haven't been listening to 400 plus episodes. So we can start retreading. We can start retreading old ground.
Yeah, we're all out of.
Well, these. I don't even know if you can access the episodes that we're talking about. Can you?
There are a select few. Actually, well, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you can even access the episodes that we're going to retread.
So before this was Ka-Pow, the Pop Culture Podcast, we started as the So Pro Podcast. Because our boys are so pro.
Oh man. That's just, I'm hard as a rock. Just think of it.
So was Cliff, you were like our first guest on there? Was that?
Yeah. Cliff was the first guest.
The third episode or second or third episode?
It was just the shoe bros back then.
Yeah, it was.
It was just us sitting around talking about what kind of shoes we like.
We're like, me too.
Yeah, hey, when May rolls around, what kind of shoes?
Like, that's the exact kind of shoes I like. Let's start a podcast.
Yeah, I think. I think I don't know if I was the first guest. I want to feel like Logan was on there.
Yeah,
maybe an episode.
You or Logan.
I think he was after you.
Yeah, I think it was you, then Logan, and probably me.
And then Christmas, you were on like the Christmas episode, Seth, when we did the soap.
No,
was the Halloween.
No, Halloween. It was Halloween. Right. Yeah, that was my first one. Was Halloween.
We're still like single digits, I think.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cliff came on, and we ended up talking like we normally did about cartoons and comic books and action figures, and what got us into this life of fandom.
The age-old question. G.I. Joe or Transformers. We all had to deal with that. We don't throw that in enough people's faces.
We really don't. We need to go back to that. Yeah.
we need to man on the street that shit. We didn't fucking get out there. G.I. Joe or Transformers.
Yeah. So that prompted the whole thing of the. At some point, we decided that we were going to make we were going to reveal our origin stories of what got us into comics or whatever, and how that happened, and
it was kind of very comic focused at the very early beginnings of this. So, and everybody, we all wanted to like tell like what kind of go back in our minds, what step by step. So it feels like we're going to do this again here off the cuff here with a little, yeah, you know me.
You down with KPP?
Yeah, you know me.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
You know me. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
You know me.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
You know me. You don't know how it feels to be me. You don't know me by now.
Why are you the way that you are?
So, Cliff, you wanna start us off here? What got you into comic books?
Granny Barnes was there at the beginning. This is very heavily Granny Barnes influence.
Granny Barnes,
yeah, really came full circle there. A couple years, or was it last year?
Grandmas are very influential.
Yes. So yeah, that's before I could even read really. My grandparents lived right across the street from a local grocery store that had a spinner rack way back in the day, and me and several of my cousins throughout the years when we were younger, we would go when school was out. We'd go over to our grandparents' house because they were retired, and spend the day, and just watching cartoons on after school hours when G.I. Joe and Transformers and all that were popular, but yeah,
not
like the first
popular.
Yeah. the first few comic books I ever had were at a very young age, and I had that came from there pretty much. I had an All-Star Squadron issue, and I had she bought me the famous G.I. Joe number 21, the silent interlude, among a few others, and that's the earliest I had. I think Michael tells the story of those comic books I had, and those were kind of some of the first ones he had any experience with for a while. But yeah, that got me, I was like cartoons and superheroes, and of course it was an extension of that, and I like G.I. Joe, and I managed to somehow keep those. Not in very good shape. They were, for the most part, covers eventually came off or whatnot. But I kept them for a long, long time. I think about the time of this episode we did about this stuff, I think I found them somewhere, and I had given Michael some of them that just because he was more into comics than I was, but so that sparked me, part of watching Real American Hero after school and in the afternoons and stuff. And then later, it just, I kind of had those same ones for a long time. Wasn't real into comic books all that much, but I liked the characters. And then I think, really I had some 90s comics, some Star Wars when Dark Horse and some of that had come out. Still have some of those. Dark Empire and all that stuff. And then years later, actually when my son was young and about the same age, he didn't, have a big interest in reading at the time, probably kindergarten-ish, probably about 4 or 5. And that was about the time Jordan opened, right about the same time Jordan opened up Asylum at the first location in Marietta that we stumbled upon one day. And from then on, for a long time, I saw that as he was interested in big, colorful comic books and superheroes and stuff and video games. He thought that stuff was cool like any kid. So I kind of used that. I remember taking him in there and just being, wall of comics and just being like, you can get whatever you want. And that sparked, kind of him learning to read a little faster and a little quicker and having, I remember reading those comic books with him for a long time. And that kind of got me back into it also. And that's when I, shortly after that, 2007-ish or whatever, the Booster Gold kind of came back into popularity with 52 and his own solo series, and I got hooked on that. I remember going in every week pretty much for a long time and grabbing the new monthly of Booster Gold, and I'd pick some other stuff up, DC stuff, because that's what I grew up on. I was like DC comics for the most part. I like Batman and Superman and stuff. And so for a long time, I kind of got into that. It bled into, the new 52 era, and I remember having a pull list with a whole bunch of those books for a while, and being a good jumping on point at that time. Fresh new stories and some old characters they brought back. But yeah, that's it. I still buy books every now and again. Still have certain characters I like. I love, the 80s Justice League International and those characters, that era with Booster and Beetle and Martian Manhunter and all those characters. When I talk about the love of a goofball misfit family that somehow always should never win, but somehow always finds the way of to beat whatever. So I like stories like that. But yeah, that's the majority of it. It's been different parts sprinkled into my life, but not I'm not a huge comic collector or anything like that. It probably, I'm sure, just Jordan opening the store in town gave me a redirected back into superheroes and movies coming out.
Who knows where we would be?
If
he hadn't
opened that store.
That's an alternate reality. I don't
we don't even want to think about it.
So yeah,
who knows what shoes he'd be wearing?
Oh,
I'd be wearing a 3-piece suit and wingtips.
Yeah, penny loafers.
I have some great paying job.
Yeah.
and be miserable instead of what I am now,
exactly.
which is
yeah.
poor and
Exactly.
miserable. I
Instead
would have
of
been
just-
rich and miserable rather
Instead
than
of walking around with the same shoes as Michael K. Easton, like
For 2
everybody
years.
should be.
2 years he's stuck now with those Michael shoes.
You're screwed.
You need to buy more comics. Start pulling.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get
Yeah,
shoes
or
more
start
often.
mailing more letters. Maybe you can get a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, that era really, you know, I found some things, pointed me eventually back into, you know, here we were in 2020 and all those years later. And I'm like, you know, I'm looking for something to do. And
what I'm curious, like you said All-Star Squadron. What were the earliest ones that you remember?
I had,
I'm so curious about what, because I feel like those early things really are influential.
Sure. Well, and you got to remember too, I was probably 4-ish when I was picking up, you know, whatever looked probably colorful.
Everyone picture this spoiled brat that had everything. He had his own Tonto cruise up the street with him. He's like this kid had every toy.
Big wheels
possible
galore.
comics could flash, you know, catch his eye.
That was it. Riding up and down the sidewalk in my Dukes of Hazzard big wheel, just tossing comics at the other kids.
Here's my trash, kids.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember that I can remember the cover. I don't know what issue it was. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, that All-Star Squadron cover. And I had a Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Number.
Which one was it? What cover was it?
Oh God, I don't remember. I want to say it was like maybe number 8.
That's the Spider-Man. That's the one.
Nope.
That's
nope. Maybe it was 6.
Okay, I don't remember what cover. It was,
it's here
Eight's
somewhere.
The one,
I still have
the
it.
Black suit.
So.
Nice. Yeah.
So I had that. I think maybe. I had a couple issues of Who's Who in the DC universe.
The DC. That's the DC. That doesn't surprise me. I that's why I was kind of curious. Like there had to have been heavy DC early to like have got its hooks in you. You know what?
Well, a big part of that came from Super Friends.
Okay. Yeah.
The cartoon
makes sense. Well, I mean, yeah, that's what they dominated the.
That late 70s. Yeah. Early,
yeah. There was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, but Super Friends was bigger,
and it was on every day.
Yeah.
That's what's weird to me is we think of those times as there was so much less. You know, nowadays there's video games and YouTube channels and there's movies on every day, but it's like we had our fair share of stuff like that where even if you weren't reading the comics, you knew these characters from Super Friends. There were records and storybooks. Like they licensed these characters, Marvel and DC, out the yin yang. So they were around in pop culture. Underoos and pajamas and like
I had them.
You were around the characters even if you didn't pick up a ton of comics. So I don't know if our memories are a little faulty of how thinking it was rarer to go to the toy store. You didn't see a lot of Batman or Spider-Man toys maybe, but again they had the superpowers line,
right?
The Secret Wars line, like they were around. So we had we had a pretty good era growing up. Maybe not the breadth they do today, but
it is tough to have perspective on that. A lot we're so close to some of it, and then we wonder, like, did anyone else know about this stuff at that time? But I mean,
and like I said, a bigger influence in my child would have been television. You know, it just was, and I mean, first words, Batman, and and I mean, when it comes to like first loves, I mean the Kenner Star Wars, those action figures, I remember getting the first 10. I remember vividly that moment opening those things up.
Kresge's, going into Kresge's, which is now Kmart, which is defunct. It's like, ugh. That's so long ago. We're so freaking old, especially me.
But that was definitely my first love, was Star Wars and Kenner Star Wars figures and that whole line, which very, very quickly bled into He-Man and that cartoon and the Superpowers line with Super Friends and that show and all of those things just progressed, for a decade, probably,
And
easily.
so my instinct is to think that would be, there's Star Wars comics out there. I want to get more of this story. But that was almost not, like, you probably were around some Star Wars comics, but, like, we played in the yard and made up our own stories and swung around sticks to be lightsabers. Like,
that's
we didn't
so true.
need, I can't imagine, maybe even the novelizations of Star Wars or any of the extraneous stuff or the video game, the arcade games or whatever. Like, you lived in that world. There were only 3 movies,
right?
And if you didn't have it on VHS,
which nobody did. I mean,
at that
for a long
point
time,
you did.
yeah.
So like you had to live in it.
You did.
might not even have a great memory of exactly what it is, but
right.
you made up your own stuff.
That's so funny because I remember playing with Empire toys. I was spoiled like Cliff when it came to Star Wars. I had all those ships and playing with snow speeders and reenacting all this stuff from Empire before Return was even out. And just like nowadays, people just watch people play on YouTube. Like they watch kids and adults play with toys on YouTube. I'm like, you can do that yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, not the same experience. Because oh my gosh, when it snowed, I mean, what's the first thing you do is you grab all your Hoth guys and your snow speeder and your AT-AT and you go out in the snow and
I have
adventures.
vivid memories of that. Like a friend of mine showing up at my house, like we're playing with our stuff like out in the snow.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that all led into G.I. Joe and everything for a long time. That really was. I have more nostalgia, more memories, more love for that than I ever did for comic books. But comic books were the origin of a lot of the stuff I loved. So it was just an extension of that. Which I remember I think in that pile I had a Red Tornado issue. I remember reading a bajillion times in which the last page of the issue was he got torn apart and was laying in like next to a garbage can in an alley. I vividly remember that. How many kids at that point knew who the hell Red Tornado was? But they knew Superman, Batman, and Robin. And that was it. Maybe Aquaman. But yeah, that's kind of where it was. And like I said, there's still things I read now, and it's weird because my favorite comic book character, I would tell you is definitely Booster Gold. I've loved those books more than anything, in different versions of that character. But that was a character that I didn't come into till way later on, and got into. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And so we know now you're mostly an action figure guy, Star Wars, vintage.
Ewoks,
kind of where your main.
All Ewoks all the time.
It started Ewoks.
Started it with Ewoks. That was going to be it. That was going to be it. Yeah. Just something to do in 2020. Hey, I was wanted all the Ewoks. I didn't even know they were all existed. I'm going to go out there and collect them.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Now is the expert at Big Fun and all of us.
Unpaid expert.
Oh, I'll go. Speaking of grannies, we used to pick my grandma up for church in the late 70s at her apartment, and she would give us each $1, which was great. Couldn't wait for Sunday. We were going to get $1. But then occasionally she would give us a comic book, and it was sometimes a Disney comic, like a Uncle Scrooge or something, but once we let her know, once I let her know what I wanted Archie, because she'd brought us Archie a couple times. It's like, okay, I want these Archie comics because this is I didn't know anything else, and it's like this is far more interesting. With all of this teen drama, you know, which really comes full circle. Guys, I'm sorry I didn't watch the Riverdale episode from 2 years ago, so we could talk about it tonight.
I mean, seriously.
I mean, seriously. But yeah, and I recently realized that Tom DeFalco, who I am hoping to get his signature this year, he created the digest, the Archie Digest, which I many times talked my mom into buying an Archie Digest as we're going through the checkout line at the grocery store. I loved a double digest. Oh, good stuff. I loved Archie. And
that is still one of the most common things I hear in the store is some variation of they still make Archie, or that you have Archie. That sparks a memory of certain people of like that's a core childhood thing is the Archie game.
Yeah, it was kids that were older than me, which is always interesting, and I the whole love triangle with Betty and Veronica, and I just I just found it really interesting and simple and funny and colorful, and it's like just kind of I really give those the credit for my love of comics as Archie. And then infamously was the trip to visit a cousin in Columbus in 81, I would say. And we were playing outside, and the neighbor kid came over. He said, I was like 10, he was maybe 11. He's like, "Hey, you want to come see my comics? Look at my comic books." I was like, "Sure." I go over to his house, go up into his room. He's got a short brown cardboard box of comics. And every time I see a comic from that, like occasionally on Twitter or something, I will see a comic cover come up. I'm like, that was in that box. Like I will mark it down and be like, that one I definitely know was in that box. I can, just it stuck in my memory. But he showed me. I flipped through, looking at him, and the one that caught my eye the most was Captain America and the Falcon 199. They're Jack Kirby. They're just exploding off the page, flipping through it. Just first time I ever laid eyes on Captain America, I was like, this is so amazing. I fell in love with the character. There was all kinds of stuff in there, and his dad walked up the hallway, looked in the room, and said, you like those comics?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Take them, all of them." I don't know what happened to this poor kid, why he was having to give up all his comics to.
He's on a different podcast explaining his origin story.
Yeah.
I not too long ago I looked
He's
up.
running some militia website.
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly.
That boy's name was Elon Musk. He went on to
That's. I mean, I've looked up just a few months ago, locating like what places that those cousins lived at that time, what locations, and like almost pursued the path of trying to find that guy to see what happened, if he remembers that. But he has to remember that. That's a core memory for me, and I did not get my comics taken away from me. But like his dad obviously did not approve of him having comic books or whatever, or he was in trouble for something. But the dad just handed me this box of comics and told me to take them, and I did. Walked right out of there with them and went back to Marietta, and I read those over the next, couple months or so, and then I was at, I believe it was People's News. There was a spinner rack, and I saw the cover of Avengers 217, which had, Cap, Iron Man, Thor, Wasp, and the light of the Quinjet behind them. And it's a very Yellow Jacket heavy issue. I didn't know he was a bad guy, not bad guy, but a wife beater at the time. And it was a heroic comic for him. But I was like, hey, that's that guy. I saw Captain America. I was like, immediately picked it up. Loved it. Immediately started mail-in subscriptions for Captain America and Avengers. And I mean, that's really where it all began.
You were one of the lucky ones. The secretary didn't steal your money.
Yeah, I must have sent in a check. I don't know, but I got that first issue in the mail. Was Cap 265. Sultan, never seen that guy again, but it had Spider-Man and Captain America in that comic, and I was like, it ended with this huge cliffhanger where they fell out of a blimp. And they're like hurtling towards the earth. I was like, comics are the greatest thing that has ever happened. It's like, I love this. Oh, I was in love with the medium. And like Cliff said, like simultaneously, I was raised by television, loved Saturday morning cartoons. I was up at 6:55 to make sure I was out there in my beanbag because it was this early 80s and watching G.I. Joe at 7:00 in the morning and just like started collecting. I realized there was a G.I. Joe comic. I think my first G.I. Joe comic was, I don't know what year that was, but it was a few years later that I stumbled onto it. But I think it was like 39 with the Stalker on the cover. And I was like, I went back and was getting all these back issues and just reading all of that. And Cap, Avengers, all that, and I'm living my dream out now. I've got a Captain America shield, going to all these cons and meeting all these artists from back in the day and trying to get them to sign it. It's just a big comic love fest for me.
Just imagine if that kid had a box of DC comics.
Exactly. It scares me to this day. Chilling. The comics I do remember from it, like off the top of my head, there was like an Iron Man cover that was pink, and he was like fighting a Leviathan. It said there was the first issue of What If I'd ever seen was What If Doctor Strange was a disciple of Dormammu, and I just every time I see a cover that was in that box, I think, man, I gotta get all this back. I did sell my comics at one point, fresh out of high school, because I was broke, living with a bunch of guys. But I've reacquired pretty much everything. That's basically it. But thanks, Grandma Offenberger, for buying us comics, for taking you to church. I didn't even drive.
Yeah, I will say, just looking here, yeah, it was Secret Wars #6, the one with Doom and all the villains on the cover and Galactus in the background. Yeah, still here somewhere. It's in a box.
Yeah, good.
What was on your pull list in 2005 when Asylum opened? Probably some Bendis New Avengers, probably.
Me? Oh my gosh, yeah. Like when I let's see. Of course, around the time I was really getting into it, books and things on Southside. We were eating at a Pizza Hut, and we looked across the street, and there was a bookstore, and talked my mom into letting us go there. And just ridiculous. A lot of local people know that as the only place we could find comics at the time, other than Spinnerax, and just amazing. I would go there all the time to try to get comics. It's the only place I knew you could get comics, and just getting those all through the late 80s and driving there once I could drive. I have a ticket I got one time. I ran into somebody because
you're reading a comic?
I broke my windshield with my head because I was reading a comic. Amazing stuff, guys.
What if Marietta had a comic book store instead of a baseball card shop back in the day?
Exactly. Yeah, that's who I sold my comics to in the early 90s.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Alonzo. Okay, yeah.
I sold him to Alonzo there at his shop there on 7th Street.
I was a big goer of Hydorn's baseball card shop on Putnam Street for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived with a bunch of guys in like 91 to 93, and I collected all Jusco's Marvel Masterpiece cards, and ended up selling everything to Alonzo because I needed money. I didn't have a job for a few months. And then yeah, like late through the 90s, I was, I got the Superman stuff, but he died, but I was really turned off by stuff there for a few years. It wasn't too long. But then when it got back into Perez and Busiek, starting Avengers Volume 3, I got back into that. And then when Asylum opened up, yeah, I remember what year did Walking Dead start?
A few years before I opened, so I think
Yeah,
first
it
ones I
wasn't
carried
too
were like
long.
the early
It
30s, so it had been maybe
oh
2
no,
years.
it couldn't have been terribly long because I remember Michael. If anyone forgot that, he has the same shoes that Jordan wear. But yeah, he showed me like Walking Dead. It must have been like issue 13, 14, something like that. And then I feel like he let me know you guys were, because before that I was going to like Gateway, or what was the place in that little shopping center on Murdoch? Maybe I don't remember. There was some little shop there that I was going.
2003. October
Yeah.
2003 is when number one came out.
Okay. There was some shop on Murdoch, some guy at a little store that I was going to, and then there was in Vienna, there was that, I want to say that was Gateway. But I was going and finding these little shops to go in every once in a while and get stuff. And then Asylum opened. I was like, all right, we got this place in Marietta, Went in there and finally, yeah. Well, that was when New Avengers that blew up. New Avengers, Mighty Avengers, Brubaker's.
Because Avengers was not.
No, it was
wasn't the
nothing.
Justice League. Like, when all the DC heroes joined and made the Justice League, that was always the hot book. Like, Avengers was a B or C list book.
Nobody knew them except me, as far as I knew. And then now we had disassembled, and wow, what's happening with this? And next thing we had New Avengers, Mighty Avengers at the same time, and Brubaker's Volume 5 of Cap, where bringing Bucky back.
Yeah,
doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah, that was right.
Does not get any bigger than that for me. Yeah. So that was it's been just pedal to metal since then, basically. So
and now you're an autograph guy.
Now I'm an autograph guy. Yeah, I didn't even know you could go around meeting all these guys. I did. The only con I had been prior to 2019, when I realized this was a thing again, was 93, 92 or 93. I went to Philadelphia when Spawn was huge. I went there. McFarlane was there. I didn't meet him, but I was there. We had a Spawn mobile, and we had a crazy trip. Just going there and it was the first real con I'd ever been to. It was huge, and that was fun. But yeah, it didn't go again until 2019. All right.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
In order. I always say I wasn't really collecting comics, but I always had comics. So our basement, when I was really young, was just concrete floor, just brick. And at some point, yeah, basement. But at some point, we kind of redid it and put paneling up and carpet. So like it became like a family room. Like we had a lot of extra space for toys and TV and stuff. So in the toy room on the shelf, we had these little cubby holes, wooden things, and they were always full of picture books and magazines and National Geographics and zoo books and Sports Illustrated, and there were always comics in there too. So like it was like a waiting room. You weren't doing anything else, go pull something out of the cubby and read it. So yeah, we all had a bunch of comics. And the funny thing is, like, they were all from like the same month. They all had the same ads on the back. So my deduction is that they were probably, like, back then from the Sears catalog, you could just order a pack of 25 comics. You could just order through the catalog.
Yeah.
I'm guessing some relative or some, bought us some of those for Christmas or something. So we just had a mix of random stuff, and some were a little older, some were a little newer, but a lot of them were from like, I don't even know what year it would have been. 80. There's some Secret Wars 2 stuff in there, so that was 86, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then some really early G.I. Joe, which would have been 82. So yeah, we're talking mid 80s probably. So yeah, I read comics all the time, and I didn't even, I kind of considered them Justin's, because I don't even know where they came from. So somebody probably gave them to him, and I just read them. So I didn't even consider them as my collection or anything. But yeah, I was definitely a cartoon. I watched all that stuff, and I watched Transformers, I watched Thundercats, I watched all this stuff, but like G.I. Joe was the one I loved. So I didn't want to miss that one. I wanted the G.I. Joe toys, and getting any G.I. Joe comic I could was a big deal. And even they had like, I forget what you'd call it. They had like the membership kit or whatever, where you'd mail away and you'd get a belt buckle and a sticker and some other, so like, and they give you like a dog tag with your name on or something. So like, I mailed away for that and got that. And they had the monthly magazine. They had that for a lot of different pop culture stuff in the 80s. They would send you the monthly. There'd be a short story in it, and kids would send in their art and stuff. So I had all that stuff, but I only had a handful of the G.I. Joe comics. So that's kind of weird to me. But my neighbor, who was a couple years older than me, he was close to Justin's age, he still shops in my store to this day. We still are friends, which is cool. One of my oldest acquaintances, Ronnie, and he had a copy of G.I. Joe #1, like the big, whatever, the Treasury edition. So it was a reprint. I thought it was the original. I didn't know any different, but it was huge. It was like almost like the size of a newspaper, and I was so jealous of that. I coveted that so badly, and then when like he joined the military and left, and like he gave it to my other neighbor. She's like, I got this G.I. Joe. I was like, you don't even know about G.I. Joe. So I vowed someday I wanted that for my collection. Like that, if I could only get a G.I. Joe #1, life would be complete. So that was always a thing of like, knowing that was right next door. There was the G.I. Joe one.
Wow.
Right next door, to someone who didn't appreciate it. So yeah, then it was baseball cards, and I said I watched all the cartoons. So I was a fan of a lot of different stuff, and all these places we talk about back in the day who sprang up and went out of business within months of each other usually were doing the cards and some kind of comics or Pogs or Beanie Babies or whatever was the hot thing at that time. So all these little collectible shops, if you're going and looking for baseball cards, they usually had comics or some other stuff as well. So that's probably how I kind of got cross-pollinated with that. It's like, oh, these baseball cards are cool. Oh, wait, look at these Marvel trading cards. Those are pretty sweet. What are these about? So again, there's all there. You didn't usually just pick one path back then. But I wasn't a huge collector. I wasn't buying them for myself. But the ones I had, I read a million times. And it's funny you mentioned knowing every book in that box, because I have the same thing. It was literally just on Free Comic Day when Justin was home. We were talking. He's like, yeah, didn't I have one with a Sentinel on? I was like, yeah, X-Men 202. I knew exactly which one it was. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, and there was one with Batman like in the snow or something. Yeah, I got that signed by Lin Wein. That was one of my favorite issues. Like, so I have a steel trap memory of exactly, because I read them a million times. Right. And the G.I. Joe issue I got Larry Hama to sign was the first one. Same as your 21 story where he didn't charge you to get a signature because he recognized it was a family heirloom. Which mine was the same way. It was beat up, the cover's falling off, but still charged me again.
He saw those fancy May shoes you were wearing. He was like, this guy's got the money.
Oh, gosh. This guy walking around with shoes barely 2 months old.
So I'd say it was probably 92. The X-Men cartoon came out, and we've talked before it. Like, okay, I love this cartoon. This is so great. I want to know more about these people. So I started ignoring the baseball cards and going toward the comic rack. And said there was a couple little shops, and even like the Kmart had a rack of comics. There were racks around, and the main shop was Alonzo's. Again, he was more of a card shop. He was a sports guy, and there was always older dudes in there hanging around talking about basketball or whatever. And it's like, and you're the little nerdy kid who wants to check out the comic book. But I bought a copy of whatever the most recent Uncanny issue was. And I got it home. I'm like, I don't really know about this. I don't really recognize these characters that weren't in the cartoons. Like, I'm not sure. So the next time I went back, there was just an issue of X-Men, which was in the 20-somethings. And that had Cyclops and Wolverine and Bishop. And like, okay,
like Jim Lee.
Yeah, it would have been right around issue 18, maybe, something like that. Early teen, something like that. So I remember going up to the counter and asking Alonzo, what's the difference between X-Men and Uncanny X-Men? He's like, like the guys in the corner, it was like the little corner box up at the top had the headshots of all the characters in it. Like, so X-Men is the one I want to be reading. I don't care about this Uncanny stuff. So I sent in a subscription. I wanted to get a subscription to X-Men. That was going to be my first subscription. And first one that shows up at the door was Uncanny 300. And it had all the gold or the foil cover. It was the anniversary edition. I'm like, I signed up for X-Men, not Uncanny. I was like, well, maybe since it's issue 300, maybe that's the only one they put out this month. Like, I didn't know how comics worked at that point. They apparently signed me up for the wrong one, so I ended up with a subscription to Uncanny, and was buying. So I had to buy X-Men
That secretary
off the shelf at Alonzo.
You know it was her.
It was, yeah. This was well after the Jim Shooter era, but it ended up being like that was right around the time like Joe Madureira came on and the Phalanx and all. So like I ended up loving both the books. So I was buying both X-Men books every month, and then I started getting into the Wizard magazines. Which was the guide.
I loved buying a magazine, especially a Wizard. Just like, this is gonna give me hours of enjoyment.
So here I am. I'm buying basically 2 comics a month, maybe a Batman here, a Spider-Man there, just occasionally. But reading Wizard, you were you knew all these other characters, you learned all this other stuff. They had interviews with creators, like they had the hot books that were coming out. So even though I was only reading a couple, like Wizard let you were on the inside. You kind of knew what was going on in the world. And plus I used it.
Was basically the internet. Just having a Wizard Max. You basically had the internet in the palm of your hand.
And a price guide, but a very important thing is knowing the
cast
value of your investment.
Yeah.
But I really credit them, and people complain about Wizard. It was just hype and fluff, and what the hot book was, or whatever. But they also did a ton of articles and checklists and top 10 lists and top 100 lists of the best single issue stories, the best story arcs, the best DC crossovers, the best this, the best that, and I would either write them down or clip them out. Because this was like, okay, I'm newer in my journey to collect. I want to read the best stuff. I want to know the classic stories. I want to know the hot book, the first appearances of these characters. So I had a ton of like reference material. So then when I ever was able to go, like we had some local shows here. Jeff Harper put on shows in Vienna at the Holiday Inn, and like so I knew what I was looking for. Like I would have things to find. Even I remember going to cons, I was in college or whatever, and still finding, that's an Animal Man issue. I remember Wizard talking about that. Like, so it was an education. Again, without having YouTube or Wikipedia to help you through this stuff, you had the crew at Wizard. So yeah, I read X-Men for 100 issues or whatever, and it was getting a little bit. But I had collected some of these trade paperbacks of classic issues, and was some of the big Nightfall or whatever. I got every issue of Nightfall.
Oh yeah.
And you had to read some of these big events going on. So then I go to college, and I was little, I was still reading them, but I wasn't as big into it here in the late 90s. And we got myself moved into college, and we stopped at a little gas station, like convenience store. Okay, well, get a half gallon of milk and we'll just a little bit of groceries and stuff for your first week of college. And there was a Wizard magazine on the shelf there. I was like, can I get a Wizard? Mom's like, sure. She was feeling nostalgic, I'm sure. So I walk in freshman dorm to meet my roommate. I got Wizard magazine under my arm. So we ended up talking. He was a huge movie buff, and he had read comics as a kid in the early 90s, as a lot of people did, and then gave up, Death Superman, that kind of stuff. And so he kind of started getting me into movies. He knew all the directors, and I wasn't a real film buff at that point, and I kind of got him back into comics. There was a shop, neither of us had a car freshman year, but there was a shop within walking distance. So we ended up, every Wednesday, we'd walk down to Comic Town in Westerville and come back with some comics. So we were kind of a good influence on each other for the for the arts. I got him up to speed on comics, and he got me up to speed on movies. So I said college could have been the time. I kind of gave it up and moved on to other stuff. But I said, having a shop, it was a good shop. Columbus has lots of good comic shops. So that was kind of the point. I started getting into Vertigo, Sandman, Why the Last Man, some of these books, some of these classic, Swamp Thing, Alan Moore. So that was kind of, this was my only off-ramp. I could have quit comics at that point, but I decided to just turn right and hammer down and go for it. Yeah. So that was graduating college and moving back home after living in Columbus for 5 years with great comic shops with great selections. I come back here and there's Alonzo still there with one little rack of books. There's Gateway in Vienna. He's not the best, most reliable source of comics. So I was 25 years old and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and just thought, what? If they give me a loan, can I just start my own shop? And the rest is poorly remembered history.
It's amazing. Changed all our lives.
It did. It's so funny listening to you guys talk about Wizard during the dark time.
Which, by the way, it's now June. How many years has it been since we've had our get out of school final exam?
It's been 2019.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe 2020. Maybe right before
all
the world
you Jessies out there know, but we used to have a guy that every year in May he would quiz us with one of those Wizard comics IQ or whatever they were in the magazine. He'd find some old issue and quiz us. We have a little contest every year. It's been at least 5 years since that's happened. So, wow. That's all I want to say. Where are you at, Jeffy? In the Matrix? What's going on?
No.
Write a song about it.
Yeah, write a song.
Prompt a song about it.
About Wizard. No, I remember in the 90s, in the dark times, that's when I discovered there was a Star Wars Insider magazine, fairly similar, different fandom. But I had a subscription to, I think I still have most of those issues in a drawer here. Star Wars Insider. Like you said, it was the internet. It was where you got all your rumors.
Magazines were amazing.
They were.
I love magazines. Love them.
I was so excited back then.
They're still out there.
I got Sports Illustrated, Entertainment Weekly, and Star Wars Insider for years.
I got Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards. Let's see, backpacking. Any kind of die cast thing. I collected Hot Wheels. Wizard. Gaming magazine. Oh, Thrasher, Transworld Skateboarding. Like
Nintendo Power.
Nintendo Power. Yeah.
Wow,
yeah. It's just so many magazines. I still have Empire. Yeah. I don't know. I love magazines, and they still make a lot of these magazines. Like in physical. We were just at a Barnes and Noble last week in Columbus, and just a huge rack of magazines.
I haven't been in People's News in years. I used to go to People's News, and they would have all those magazines.
I mean, online magazines it ain't the same.
Yeah.
Gotta have that physical thing to carry around with you. Meet your college roommate, holding it, see if he shuns you or embraces you.
That's a test.
See
Number
if he's got
one,
the same
do you read Wizard? Number 2, yeah. Do we have the same shoes on? Number 3, Transformers or G.I. Joe?
Yeah.
Actually, one of the first things we're talking about movies. He was asking favorite movies or whatever, and he's like, "You ever see that movie, The Cable Guy?" And I had it. It was one of the 5. I brought VCR and 5 or 6 VHS tapes, and The Cable Guy was one of them. So I'm like, we're gonna get along just fine.
Somebody to love. We did it.
Yeah.
Now you know us.
We redid it.
We redid it.
Oh.
We've been dying to do it for freaking almost 10 years. We finally got to do it again. Oh, 10 years. Tomorrow, guys, 10 years anniversary. We play Dragon Age tomorrow. It will have been 10 years since we started this campaign.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy. June of 2014. Now 2024. Here we are.
Well, what'll be 10 years for podcasting, Jordan? When did you guys start? Was it 2014? Like fall of 2014, I think, or maybe probably, August or September, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that sounds
I want to say the
right.
Halloween was Halloween of 2015. I think. Because 2016 was me and Michael pulling our hair out in the basement in the bunker. Yeah. So it would have been 2015 that we were on Putnam.
I'll have to look it up.
There you go. That's us. You know us. We hope you love us.
You
don't have to love us. That's fine. You can just know.
Yep. All
right. So we'll be back with more from the pop culture world sooner rather than later. My name is Jordan Lowe.
Cliff Barnes.
I'm Seth. Bye forever.
Ka-Pow, the pop culture podcast, is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Sounds, music, and clips played during the podcast are property of copyright holders. All original content is property of www.udownwithkpp.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a comment. Ka-Pow, the pop culture podcast, can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found. You can connect with us through social media on Facebook, YouTube, at the Ka-Pow Podcast on Twitter, or email the show, Ka-Pow, the pop culture podcast @gmail.com. If you really want to go the extra mile, join our Patreon at patreon.com/udownwithkpp for special content and access to Patreon-only benefits. We are grateful for anyone who chooses to contribute, but please know that most of our content will remain free. So please continue to like, comment, and share.